to another episode of Crafty Chat. I'm Heidi, and here as always with Nancy and Lucy, and also welcoming today Loren, who is also one of our fellow workers at the Ann Arbor District Library. And we invited Loren on to talk about, he does a lot of lettering programs. He's done a couple videos here on AADL TV, also teaching comics and drawing. So we're going to get into, I love how you use the word Genesis. So let's get the Genesis story from you, Loren.
Sure, yeah. Well, I just wanted to start off by talking about the how I got into calligraphy, and really I think calligraphy is maybe not the best word for what I like to do, although I still use it because it's just the easiest. If I start talking about letter arts and lettering and graphic design and all the other aspects of it, I think it gets pretty wild and woolly really quickly. But calligraphy is something that I love to do, and I've loved to do it ever since middle school, really, when I saw a coffee table book that my mom had out about an artist named William Morris. And I think he was a British artist at the beginning of the 20th century, late 19th century, and he helped found this arts and crafts movement. And he was kind of reacting to the mechanization and industrialization of all kinds of different crafts, from furniture creation to, I guess, like your textile design, and I think maybe even book printing, and how he was seeing a low quality in all of these things. And so he had the time, and I should also point out he had the money to dabble in a lot of different things. And so he dabbled away at many like furniture design, book design, printing, type design, and calligraphy. And calligraphy every Sunday. And I remember as a 11-year-old opening that book and thinking like, whoa, it's actually pretty amateur calligraphy. It's really like, I guess it's really loose, one would say. It's really kind of crazy with all kinds of embellishments on the side. He was really inspired by medieval scribes. And so anyway, I just remember really clearly as a young guy, like looking at that page and thinking, whoa, this is really amazing. Because I've always drawn, and I've always had, that's always come really easy to me and quickly to me, that type of creativity where I can just pick up a pencil, a pen, or marker lying around and just doodle. And I still love to doodle. And I think as I'm getting older now, I'm seeing like a connection more and more with like my desire to doodle on a page, and when I sit down and practice calligraphy. And anyway, I did want to say, I want to fast forward a few years. And I think I was playing around a fair amount myself throughout high school and college, and I actually brought this. I don't know if you can see this too well, but this is
cool.
This is a very, very very, very early into the genesis of my love of calligraphy, where I didn't really know much at all. I was just fooling around, and my mom, I think, again, gave me another calligraphy book that is still in print. It's called the Speedball Calligraphy Manual, and it has tons of different hands in it, and types of styles of calligraphy. And so I was practicing out of that and just having a good time. And then maybe about a decade ago, I moved to San Francisco, and I thought I was signing up for a printmaking summer class, and it turned out that the teacher there was noticing what I was doing. I was trying to etch. I was copying an Albrecht Dürer print, and he was a big printmaker and a woodblock carver, and he also had really wonderful, thick Gothic writing. And anyway, the teacher looked at what I was doing, and he said, "Oh, why are you doing that?" First of all, he laughed, and I said, "Oh, I love like getting into the letters. I love drawing this like this." And he said, "You need to join this club called the Friends of Calligraphy." And I showed up to a Friends of Calligraphy meeting out there, and quickly found my people. I took a class and learned very quickly that what I was doing could be improved. Like what I was doing on my own, kind of haphazardly, actually has a tradition behind it. And I learned a lot more about that tradition from people who are a lot farther along in their study of calligraphy than I was. And I think the reason I stuck with it since 10 years ago, more or less, is because I learned that there's always a chance to improve. There's always a way to go deeper and deeper into this craft and the study of it. And I think it has a lot of applications, not just when I sit down and I'm trying to meditatively focus on the words in front of me and the letter forms, but in my everyday life, when I'm writing with my chicken scratch handwriting, there's a connection there too, or there could be if I wanted there to be, and I worked at that. And I love how like just completely immersive this drawing art is, and specifically drawing letters. I'm just going to show this right now because this is something that I did more recently, and you can see that there's a lot of a difference between this kind of way of just drawing on the page the letters, and maybe you can see a little bit more skill here. I'm going to open this up.
I definitely can. I actually, one of the things in addition to that's real. Okay. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And one of the meditative things that like soothing kind of, like those ultra satisfying videos that are really popular on YouTube right now, calligraphy. I love watching close-up calligraphy videos. And I can tell just from your ink flow control how much better you've gotten from that first versus the second, because I can see light and dark spots in the first piece that you showed, and then like your ink control is really solid and it's like a solid color, which is not easy to do with like the really thick nib calligraphy pens that are really, really common in a lot of modern calligraphy. But that's, so it looks great, and I can definitely see an improvement.
Thank you. Yeah.
I like that you have like that. It does have that meditative quality, working with it, and just, how you're talking about how you could like, if you wanted to, if you really wanted to pay attention and focus, like there's that book, your handwriting can change your life. And I think it's just more of just like paying attention and being mindful, of what you're doing, how you're doing, and that kind of thing. But yeah, so it sounds like the whole lettering thing, it's really does have wide applications. Like, you were doing the printmaking, but I know you do a lot of with like the comic drawing and teaching and graphic art. So I'm sure, lettering is a big aspect to graphic novels. I mean, there's some I pick up and I'm just like, I want to read it, but I can't, like, it's just too difficult sometimes. Like, so that font, that lettering can really make a difference, I guess, in what I'm going for here with my point.
And that's, I kind of have seen the same thing because I'm a big comic and graphic novel reader. And that's, that I've had that same experience, Heidi, of like, I can't, this type style, whatever it is, I don't like it. I can't read it. It's driving me crazy. But I've always thought that was really cool with typography, of each different font and different writing style has a different feel to it and evokes a different voice in your head or a different tone or pacing. And I've always thought that was really cool. The one that I can think of the most that does this is Neil Gaiman's Sandman series. Almost every different character has a different type when they speak.
Right.
So you can tell who's speaking, and then during like inner monologues that aren't bubbles, it's easier to identify which character is speaking. And I always thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If anyone else wants to say anything, I'm talking a lot. You should just cut me off. This is fascinating. You're like right in my wheelhouse with what you're saying. I mean, this is my love. And I brought another thing to just show you quickly. I mentioned that like drawing has always come pretty easily for me, but drawing a certain kind of drawing, and that is like drawing kind of comics. And you can kind of see what on this really simple, like just a page of my sketchbook there, that I guess like what you're saying, Nancy, about I don't know, like wedding the language with the drawing, the picture is really important. And you know, with your letter forms, you don't want it to overpower the picture. but you don't want to crowd it out, but you also want it to like say something and kind of enhance the picture. So I mean, I'm teaching some kids right now remotely and over Zoom. It's so weird, but we're making it happen, and they're
Great.
they're drawing picture faces, and then to draw a face is one thing, but then can you like give the face maybe a little more, give us some more context, give it some life by having that face say something. Like it's one thing to draw Frankenstein's monster, but it's another thing to have Frankenstein's monster say, "Excuse me, sir, would you be so good as to tighten my bolts?" or something like that. Like that's then giving us like new information about this drawing. And I kind of love like the interplay.
It's that concept of visual storytelling with graphic novels that I really love, because that marrying of like the character and what they look like and then their typography and the speech bubbles that they use is a really complicated thing. So like, to use the Frankenstein's monster example that you mentioned, it would have a very different impact if the bubble had like Old English or script type thing versus like Arial bold or another really, really heavy, dense, bold kind of type that doesn't, it's not frilly at all. Those two different things, two different type bubbles would have a very, very different connotation contextually with the character. And that's a really cool interplay, I think, of that type of visual storytelling.
Yeah. For
But-
sure.
Yeah, I think that's probably what makes graphic novels so like immersive, I think, and why they're so pleasurable to read is that you just totally sink into the story. And you might, like, I don't create them at all, but I definitely read them, and you might not notice if the lettering is the right lettering, you know, because the flow is there and you are completely immersed in the story. But I can imagine if it was the wrong lettering, that it would be jarring, and you wouldn't be able to completely fall into that story in the same way. So it's not something I've really thought about, but it's interesting now going back and thinking about recent graphic novels that I've read.
Yeah. I mean, I think Heidi and Nancy both, you said there were graphic novels that you kind of just had to be like, oh, I have to put this down, because there was just something annoying or bothering you about the lettering or how it was maybe designed. And I think that's where the connection could be, that you could find between just like a pure, like maybe what somebody practicing calligraphy is doing when they sit down, and a graphic designer and a type designer and a cartoonist and a comics artist. I mean, you're arranging information, you're trying to communicate, you're trying to get your point across, and you're trying to do
a team on that.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to be on the same page, or it doesn't play out the same way, or it doesn't play out in as immersive a way as it could do.
Yeah.
I love what's interesting to me, and what I'm loving about this is that you're talking about the emotional connection, the emotional aspect. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily initially think about that with hand lettering. You know, it's just, you're like, oh, it's lettering, it's writing or something like that. But because of the design and how it can evoke a different emotion, and maybe somebody has that font in a graphic novel that's really challenging and starting to irritate me because they want me to be getting under my skin as part of the story, which is, it's just, that's like such a trick. A cool trick.
One of the things that I started doing, I had kind of the same experience that you did, Loren, at a young age. I was a library kid. I was in my local library all the time. And I loved the nonfiction section. And one of the things that I pulled off at one point was a calligraphy book. And at the time, it was like, I can't find the supplies for this. I'm, from Jackson County, rural area. In the early 90s, those kind of resources were not available. So I remember when we were school shopping one year, I think I was maybe 3rd or 4th grade, and there was a Speedball section in Office Max. And I begged my mom to let me get a calligraphy pen, and I got one and one bottle of ink. And I used both of those up, and then didn't get another calligraphy pen until I was in my teens. And then I had a glass calligraphy pen that was like a dip pen, and I had goose feather dip pens, and I would try to cut my own goose feathers, and it would fail miserably. I always had to buy them because I wasn't very good at it. I stopped doing it for a long time, and then maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I started getting into journaling, and bullet journaling really came onto my radar. Was the first time. I don't remember the connection, but I found fountain pens.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a website online where I could buy fountain pens for $3 a piece. So I bought a ton of those and then used those for like 2 or 3 years exclusively. And that started my love of like pens and writing, and not even necessarily doing calligraphy, but just like my own writing and having that enjoyable experience with the perfect pen. And that was really cool to kind of watch that progression for me from like the really hyper specific like calligraphy and kind of like the old-fashioned style of writing and into like modern bullet journaling, writing, fountain pens. Like that whole progression for me was really cool. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I guess I should have guessed when you were pointing out the differences that you saw in the calligraphy that I held up, that you had a hand in this yourself, because that's exactly right. There's a real seductive aspect to the interplay between pen, your paper, and your hand, and your control or lack thereof, or I mean, how much attention you're going to bring to it or not. And I think that is a big selling point, attraction for this kind of creative endeavor, for sure.
It's artistic in a utilitarian way, which I always thought was really cool. And there's something like when I first started using fountain pens again, I was doing a lot of research into like how they work and the concept of like the fluid dynamics that go into how fountain pens work, and they work through capillary action, which is like you have a reservoir of ink, it goes through a medium, and then the capillary action, if I'm explaining this correctly, is like has something to do with like the surface tension of the ink and the surface tension of the paper, and how the paper absorbs the ink with the nib kind of controlling where it goes. So like that kind of, it's been a long time since I've done any reading about that, so my memory on it is really foggy.
You definitely know more than me, so keep going.
And it was just so cool. And I was like, this is one of those Wikipedia holes that I've fallen down in the last several years of like, how does this work? Because like I've talked about before, I'm a process crafter. I want to know how things work. I want to take it apart and figure it out and then put it together and use it.
Yeah.
So that I thought was really, really cool about fountain pens. And about just that in general. Plus just like there's something really, I don't know, my big thing as a crafter is arts and crafts as an art form, and as like arts and crafts being just as valid of an art form as studio art like painting or sculpture or some of the traditional art that you would go to school for.
Amen.
So I've done a little bit of research into like the arts and crafts movement in the United States. And it's, again, this was several years ago that I was doing that kind of reading, so my memory's really foggy on it. But I love that creating for beauty, that concept of like utility and beauty, kind of married together to make something really beautiful that enriches life and makes it more satisfying to live, makes life better, but in a way that's accessible to everyone. So like with calligraphy and hand lettering, the market for that and like the supplies that are available and the resources has just exploded. And one area that I can remember kind of kickstarting that was wedding invitations.
Oh yeah.
This is the first place that I really saw it, was like hand lettering for wedding invitations and letters and stuff like that. So we were seeing 2 or 3 years ago in the library just like an influx of all of these hand lettering and calligraphy books coming into the collection. Yeah. And it was like, okay, that's cool. Like when the library starts getting those kind of books, to me, that's indicative of like, what are people interested in? What is the current zeitgeist of like, where is the interest in arts and crafts and in making things? And I always thought that was really cool to watch that.
Yeah.
It was kind of a weird tangent that I went off on, but.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think that it's a big tent, calligraphy. And when I say that word, it sounds anachronistic, but it's about letters. It's about drawing. We have this relationship with this alphabet that's, we've inherited. It spans millennia, and we're drawing from all of the people, the scribes or handwriters, the people who have written correspondence, who have, you know, poured their souls into pages. You know, we're communicating with them. We're channeling them, and we're making it ours. I think I don't have. Sorry, I'm going to just step up on my soapbox a tiny bit. I don't have any interest in being an anachronism with my craft. I'm not really interested in, you know, like dressing up like a monk and like hanging, but that's cool. That stuff is cool. I have to say that, because I love like Ren Fair. I love it. But I'm not going to do that because I guess for me, like, I want it to be part of like my everyday life. And I want also the letters that I'm trying to make, through practicing other people's letters and the what are called exemplars, like the gold standards of various hands, you know, the stuff that you find in the Speedball manual, for instance. Like that stuff is good. It's a good starting point, but it's only a starting point. And I think that the more I make, you know, letters like my own, the more that I can like let go of exemplars or other people's work and just like have it be a part of me. Like it's in here, it's in my hand. And I have the control of my limited tool set. You know, you don't need to have, I love that you brought up the pens, because I mean, honestly, there's like a wormhole for everything. And definitely with calligraphy, you could just geek out about pens and like, oh, how do I fill the cartridge, or like what paper should I use? And there's all of those questions. But one of the things I'm super grateful to one of my teachers out in California for saying to me, this woman named Susie Taylor, she was the curator of actually the preeminent calligraphy collection, it may be in the Western Hemisphere. It's at a public library of all places, of course, the San Francisco Public Library. She was the curator of this special collection of calligraphy, mostly from drawing from American and British calligraphers from the 20th century. But she said to us, look, I have all this, because she did that. She did all the work. She made it her business to find all the tools, to chase them down, to try them out, to practice everything from stone carving to, foil embossing to illumination, to just every hand. She tried everything, but she said at the end of the day, it's not about the tools. It's about your butt in the seat practicing. And I just love how she said, like, there's no secret here. There really isn't. Like, yes, there's a lot of maybe knowledge to gather. And I think that is a useful quest, if you will, like, you know, to go on this quest of who did this, who learned this, who originated what. But to really like make it your own is what I'm about. And yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I think is really interesting about all kinds of arts and craft forms, and we can talk about this with writing, fiber arts, whatever. It's surprising to me how much history is there with what you're reading and what you're learning, when that history is what has made it for you and is what's teaching you. But there's a certain amount of that falls entirely into the background once you gather the knowledge that you need to start teaching other people and to pass on that information. It's there, but it stops being as important. It's not like with a studio art thing where you're trying to emulate a certain artist's style or a certain period style. Yeah. You can go that direction with arts and crafts and any kind of crafting, but that going forward and making it your own and making it part of having your impact on it, your authenticity built into it, I think is really, really important and really cool. And that kind of took me in the direction of like teaching and what have been your experiences with teaching kids and adults, or introducing this kind of knowledge to other people?
Well, I just try to stay one step ahead of everybody. I'm flying by the seat of my pants most of the time when I'm teaching, and I use that term very loosely. I mean,
that's the secret. We're all flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah. I guess I'm young. A lot of calligraphers are super old, at least the ones who I haven't encountered. I know there's a new generation, a type kind of like, which is cool, of people who do this like you mentioned, I think earlier, for in front of their Instagram on TV, on their screen, they're doing it digitally, and that stuff is exciting, I think, too. And where was I going with this? Oh yeah, I'm just totally underqualified to actually teach this in a one-stop shop type of a way. I've had the pleasure of teaching adults some calligraphy, a type of hand called italic. Italic is this beautiful hand originated in the Renaissance, and it's still used today. I mean, if you look at a typeface and you have the italic version, that's where that term came from. It's that slanted script that originated in the Italian Renaissance. And yeah, I guess so that's a difficult script to do, and I'm not great at it. But through teaching people, I learned so much about like what I don't know. And I guess that is the major benefit. I hope that there's maybe some ancillary benefits for the people who are my students. But no, I think being really passionate and being really like aware of the give and take in a teaching situation has been what I love about it. I remember the very first day I showed up to do my teaching in front of adults. With kids, you can kind of fake it a little bit. A little more easily, I've found, which is great. And they're a tough audience too in their own right. Anyway, I was showing some adults how to line your paper, because before we sit down to write, we need to have a surface that's ready for writing, and you can't just sit down and write. Like, anyway, a student looked up at me and was like, "This is too complicated. This is not what I came here to do. I did not come here to like line my paper with the T-square your way, whatever the hell this is. This is not what I'm here for." And I kind of had to go, okay, well, I guess like that. I want you to give it a shot. If you don't feel like giving it a shot, I can work around this for you. I can give you one of my sheets that's already ready, but this is kind of part of it. And so I guess there's like this, I don't know, this sounds maybe a little like, I don't mean this to come off as snobby, but there are certain things that, are part of the process of learning that like, you'll stretch you, and it might also not be for you. Like, this particular way of lettering wasn't for her. I hope that she still loves lettering, because there was a reason why she showed up in the first place. But I don't know. I guess like,
well, there's a beauty in teaching, and that's a kind of a requirement for the kind of teaching that we do at the library, of like taking a lot of folks' expectations and meeting their expectations of, we're coming at this from a perspective of like, these are things that we love and that we're passionate about, and we want to give you all of the information immediately so that you have all of our knowledge to start doing this, where you have to be a little flexible with that, of like, there are going to be folks coming in that they just want to learn how to do something, and then they want to walk away with a finished product, which for some things is a really, really valid perspective. And that kind of gratification of having a finished product, I fully understand that, because that's a lot of what I love about crafting. But there are certain things of like, no, you do need to kind of build a knowledge base with this, and you do need to come in with a little bit of experience, with a little bit of at least the dexterity physically and mentally to adapt to what we're doing. But that thinking on the fly for teaching of how do I adapt what my expectations are to what the students' expectations are, that's a really big challenge, and it's something that is hard to do successfully, but if you do, that makes that huge impact. Because you were saying that you weren't an expert in calligraphy, and you weren't somebody that, you don't know everything, and you're not like the best teacher, but you're still a gateway into the art form, and you're still there's a huge need in a lot of different areas to have introductory teachers. Have anybody show you the basics and see if that sparks something for that person. If you want to be an expert, that's awesome. But there's a place at all levels of learning for a lot of the different stuff that we do where that's not necessary. You don't have to be an expert. For knitters, like, not everybody's going to be an Elizabeth Zimmerman. Like, not everybody's going to be the preeminent knitter in the knitting world. So I love that, being like a mid-level teacher, kind of jack of all trades crafter. I love being able to adapt what I know to somebody else's interest or learning level or skill level or adaptability level. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that, of being able to, and that interplay between me and a student, and watching that light bulb moment of, I get it, I understand what you're saying, like we connect on that. And that connection point for me is really important. And I think that's a big aspect, like it was a very human aspect of what we do, of like connecting with that person is really cool. And that's why I love teaching, is that connection point.
It just reminded me of teaching yoga, how that really applies to, you'd have somebody come in for a class and it's like, I want to tell you everything. I want you to understand how amazing and passionate I'm about this. So you can appreciate it, but you also have to respect that, like, they can only take in so much, and who knows what reason they're here for. And there's the other people in the room as well. And that might be the only class they ever take in their life. And that could just be like, it satisfies their need, their desire, or maybe they come back years from now. So it's not like you can be like, you have to come back tomorrow. It's like, they will come in their time. So it's like that person in your calligraphy class, it wasn't their moment, but they had a little taste of it. And, perhaps, it's something that when they are ready, they'll be
What's
there.
the scary thing too about teaching is sometimes I've had a lot of experiences with teachers of like, the teacher will make or break the subject for me.
Oh, totally.
Like math for me is the one big one of like, all the teachers I had broke that for me. That's not like, that was not a good experience I had growing up. But like, I have to kind of put my brain in the back seat a little bit of like having that anxiety of, what if I'm not teaching this right? What if I'm not connecting with this person? If I'm not explaining it for them? That's a little bit of the negative side of that interaction of sometimes you are going to get it wrong.
Doing these videos is constantly like that, like these crafty because it's like, I don't know if I'm teaching this right. So I'm like, I go back and re-record. So I'm like, that whatever I said, that probably didn't make sense to anybody. And it's just like, oh.
One thing I think about that, like I was thinking about, I started doing these knitting 101 classes at the library sort of by default. Like I had an instructor coming in, and one time she was sick. Yeah. And so the events team was like, all right, can you do it? And so, and it's like, I know how to knit, and I know, and we've, like in our fiber arts labs, we've taught people how to do it, but there were moments where I was teaching someone how to do something, and I know how to do it, but something that I was learning in the teaching is the why I do it that way. Like, Loren, you were saying you with calligraphy, you went back and you learned a lot about the history of it, but there are some things that I find I just do. And the beauty in teaching is that maybe you also learn why you do it,
Yeah.
Like this, or you can see the construction of something better when you're showing someone how to construct it. And so I think what I've noticed in some of those classes I've taught is that I think, and maybe I'm getting it wrong, but what I'm taking away is that patrons don't mind seeing that from you. It's sort of like that this is a constant learning, and everyone is going to have a different level, but even this person who's teaching me is having a moment where they're realizing something they didn't see
there's like
before.
an equal footing.
There is. Yeah. I've had that situation where I'm trying to teach somebody how to crochet, and I think Loren, you mentioned earlier of like, you almost, when you're teaching, you learn what you don't know. So there's like, you kind of can pick out what the holes are in your knowledge, which I think is a terrifying thing, and it's happened to me more than once. But I did that at one point. I was trying to teach a gentleman to crochet at a cat toy program that we were doing, and trying to teach him. You remember this, Heidi?
Yeah.
I was not on my A game in any way. I was not with it, and he was so patient with me trying to explain to him how this worked, and I kind of looked at him like, I'm so sorry, I can set you up with a YouTube video. My brain is not here right now. This is not working for me. And he was really, really compassionate and really had a good sense of humor about it. But that was my worst case scenario of like, I've just today's not my day for teaching crochet. But that's it happens, and it's something where I've been lucky enough to have a lot of experiences with folks that I've been teaching at the library, where they're always very patient with us if we're having a bad day or not figuring it out, or kind of realizing, like Lucy said, where our holes are, and why we do what we do the way we do it.
And also, like, oh my gosh, I have so many things to say. Let me see if I can like try, because this is very interesting to me. I guess like what we have all been talking about here with teaching, it seems, is like it's an art unto itself, right? Like, you're a crafter, you know your stuff, you got this thing that you are pretty good at, but then there's this dynamic that is introduced with all these other humans in the room with their various levels of, experience or enthusiasm. You need to gauge. And that's the wonderful thing about coming together, is that if you approach it like Nancy, you and just what you were saying about letting that patron know up front, look, I've been having a day here. I can give you some other sources here, but right now this is just not going to happen between you and me. I think if you come to teaching with that humility rather than that spirit of authority, unless you're super hot teacher, you're great at being a teacher as well as being your craft. I don't know. I think that's really served me well too, to just be humble and know that this is a two-way interaction. This is a total conversation, which is, I think, what I aspire to create through making calligraphy or making letters, making my comics too. It's like, I want this to be a conversation. I don't want to just be sitting here talking to myself.
Yeah.
I really do want to learn from you. I do want to help you if I can. And I do want to meet you where you're at. And those are all in play big time with the practice of teaching. And yeah, I mean, I've been so, so many wonderful, unexpected things come out of teaching someone. And I think particularly in person, where you kind of read the room, you feel the energy, like we're all looking at each other through a screen. I can kind of tell everybody's energy just by looking at your thumbnails, and you can probably tell mine. But there's something really wonderful, like you were saying earlier, Nancy, about just being that teacher who may not be teaching to the pros. You're not teaching to the stars. You're teaching to the people who are just, maybe they don't even know they're interested in this thing yet, but they sat down in the library and they are, whoa, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that in 30 minutes. They're blown away by what they can create because you helped facilitate that. And I think that's the wonderful thing about the library, and like, that type of teaching too, that style of offering, and it's important. Yeah
Definitely. That like level of enthusiasm for me of watching folks, like, especially what you said of like that moment late in a program where somebody looks at you and be like, I can't believe that I did this. I'm like, I know, right? You can totally do this. I get really excited about that, of like, I told you, you totally can do this. It's just that getting over that voice in your head of like, I can't do this. I don't learn very well by dictation style of like academic learning of like, I'm just going to be a teacher at the front of a room. Presenting to students. I work much better with that interaction, with that conversation. And that requires for me like that level of humility and that authenticity and honesty with myself of like, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do. And I'm going to try to do the best for the folks that are in the room, and like reading the room and figuring out that kind of flexibility. That's you cultivate that as teaching and presenting programs in the way that we do.
I remember trying to teach right out of college. I did this like AmeriCorps thing, a program where I was teaching kids, and it was all about the Mr. B show. It really was, in a sad way. It was all about like, oh gosh, I've got to do this. I have to do this for the students. It's all like me presenting and being the person. I was teaching fifth grade my first year at this, and I was teaching a self-contained classroom. So these poor kids did not have a break from me the entire day. And it sort of, I was too focused on the showmanship of it. I was too focused on like, to say nothing of the subjects, which even like, I know it's fifth grade, like 10-year-olds, you'd think that I would, 10 years older, I'd be able to understand how to do this. But no, I didn't have a thorough understanding of the subject matter. Everything was like, but the problem was, I think the main problem would have been, the other problems would have gone away if I hadn't just been so anal retentive about wanting to control. And I've learned that through my years of teaching, not full-time, but teaching art to kids. So like something I'm super passionate about, and it's a lot lower stakes. I have so much appreciation for full-time public school teachers, and but I guess like, if I can, I know what I think I know, but I also am going to be surprised by what the kids bring to whatever situation it is. Like the other day I was showing kids how to draw faces again, and someone came up with this just exquisite like thing. I don't know why it hit me. Maybe it's I'm emotional, we're in quarantine, but there was a girl who showed like this face, and she was playing with this idea of like words saying one thing and the face saying another. So she had this like happy faced person, like just like looking cheerful, and then the speech balloon said like, oh, why do you have to go away? Like it was like this really like poignant, and like it's just like, whoa, this like totally hit me in this unexpected way. I didn't teach you that. That came out of you. And I love that about when I've had the chance to teach calligraphy too, is like, can people, it was during these multi-meeting sessions, people would bring their homework, and I would just, someone wiser than me just said, you need to start every class by letting them talk about what came up for them over the course of the week. What was the pitfall, what was unexpected. And here are these like 15 humans who are really green to this craft, teaching me so much in like an hour that I didn't know an hour before about, the beginner's mind, or like, because I could dimly remember some of the things we were talking about, or no. In fact, like this was all stuff that still is with me, the same problems that they have, I have now. A few rungs in the ladder higher, they're still the same problems. But to hear them say it to one another and to share that, I think was really, really meaningful. And I love being able to facilitate that style of conversation. Like conversation literally means like turning together. If you were like doing this together, this is truly a conversation, then I've done my job as a teacher a little bit better than if I didn't have that mindset.
That beginner's mind is so magical. There's no boundaries. There's no ties that are, limiting them for the art, for like with medium or what they're supposed to be doing or what they should do. And watching that beginner's mind and the leaps that they make is so, God, that's so magical. And I love that you mentioned that. And that I kind of had a thought too of like, it's so easy for me to fall into that academics, that like you talked early in that, that kind of monologue of like standing and being interested in the showmanship and what you're presenting. And like, it's so easy for me to fall into that, of like, here, I'm putting on a show for you guys. And like, this is, I'm really enthusiastic about this and I'm giving you this, but that may not be what necessarily folks are interested in. And that may not be what your group that you're presenting to wants to do. They want more of that conversation. So I've experienced that myself, of having that moment of like, I am putting on a show, and that is not what I'm here for. So
well, yeah, I mean, like you said, I love that you mentioned, because that is a part of it. The enthusiasm that you naturally bring to what you're teaching, your subject matter, is part of who you are, and it's part of your teaching persona. Like it or not, that's your enthusiasm is going to be shining through. And I for one really like that. But that, if I had to go back in time, if I could, and talk to that student who just said, no, not for me, not what I signed up for, I really, really hope that she doesn't, I think what I would have told her was try again, find another teacher. This may or may not be for you, but don't make this interaction the make or break, the thing that makes you walk away from this craft, because it could well be that like you gel with somebody else, and probably with somebody way more experienced than me, you'll learn more. So that is, I think that's part of it too. I still, I try to live that advice. I'm still learning, and I want to learn from as many people as possible for that reason.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for being on the video cast with us. We appreciate your perspective a lot, and it was really, really fun talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Yes, it's always fun for us too. So, thank you all for joining us. Don't forget to like and comment, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to ping us in the comments, and we will get to your questions. We will all be here for the premiere of the video, or at least one of us will. And have a great day. Stay Stay safe and healthy. Don't forget to love each other. Bye.
Bye.